What would you do if your CEO hired a driver to abandon you in a frozen Rocky Mountain blizzard 60 miles from the most important presentation of your life? Madison Parker was standing in 3 feet of Colorado snow at 9,000 feet elevation, her phone showing 2% battery, watching her career die with every unanswered ring. Right now, 180 Silicon Valley executives were sitting in a Denver Tech Center conference room waiting for her to present the biggest renewable energy deal in Colorado history, a $95 million Tesla partnership that took her 7 months to develop. But Madison wasn't there. She was trapped in a whiteout blizzard near Vail Pass, abandoned by her own CEO because she wouldn't sleep with him. Her presentation clothes were soaked through, her laptop bag was buried somewhere in a snowbank, and William Hayes was probably watching his new girlfriend Ashley steal Madison's life's work at that exact moment. The temperature was 12 degrees below zero with 40-mile-per-hour winds. Madison tried calling Hayes, but he'd blocked her number. She tried calling 911, but the call wouldn't connect in the storm. While Madison was fighting hypothermia and trying to find cell coverage in the Rocky Mountains, Ashley Morrison, Hayes' 26-year-old girlfriend who joined the firm 3 weeks earlier with zero renewable energy experience, was walking into that Tesla conference room carrying Madison's briefcase, her slides, and her 7 months of research. She was introducing herself to Drew Martinez from Tesla as the lead consultant on the Colorado Megapack project, and presenting Madison's technical specifications as if she'd developed them herself. But here's what that Harvard MBA piece of shit Hayes didn't know. 3 days earlier, while organizing his client files as punishment duty, Madison had discovered bank statements from Credit Suisse showing $8 million in wire transfers marked as business development trips that were actually funding his secret second family in Switzerland. While Madison's father Frank sat in Detroit facing foreclosure after losing his Ford assembly job, Hayes had been living like a king with 2 wives and stolen money from defense contractors. The bastard thought abandoning her in a blizzard would break her, make her quit, disappear quietly like some scared little girl. He thought wrong. Because Madison had recorded every conversation, photographed every document, and she knew exactly which FBI agent handled international fraud cases for defense contractors. The question is, when Hayes realizes what Madison discovered about his Swiss accounts and his bigamy, will he try to have her killed before she can destroy him completely? Let me take you back 9 months before that frozen nightmare in the Rocky Mountains, back to when I thought William Hayes was just another demanding CEO instead of the predator who would destroy my life. I was Madison Parker, 29 years old, senior project manager at what I believed was Denver's most prestigious consulting firm, Hayes Global Consulting. The office occupied 3 floors of a gleaming tower in the Denver Tech Center, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Front Range Mountains that I'd come to love during my 2 years in Colorado. I'd moved from Detroit after my consulting degree, chasing the dream of renewable energy consulting in a state that was leading America's clean energy revolution. My father, Frank, had raised me alone after Mom died when I was 12. He'd worked the Ford assembly line for 34 years, building the F-150s that made America run, taking pride in every truck that rolled off that line. Frank Parker was the kind of man who believed in honest work, fair wages, and treating people with respect, values that made him a dinosaur in corporate America, but a hero to his daughter. When Ford announced another round of layoffs in Detroit, targeting workers over 55 as part of their operational efficiency initiative, Frank was among the first to go. 34 years of loyalty, and they handed him a severance package that wouldn't last 6 months. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was preparing quarterly reports. Frank's voice was steady, but I could hear the devastation underneath. "Madison, honey, they let me go yesterday. Plant manager said it's nothing personal, just business restructuring." That's when I knew I couldn't afford to take risks with my career anymore. Frank was 58 years old in a city where manufacturing jobs were disappearing faster than auto plants could close. His unemployment benefits would run out eventually, and his savings were already stretched thin from Mom's medical bills years earlier. I was his safety net now. Hayes Global Consulting seemed like the perfect place to build the kind of career that could support both of us. William Hayes had founded the firm after his Harvard MBA, and his client list read like a Fortune 500 directory: Apple, Microsoft, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. The man walked around the office like he owned Denver itself, always in his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suits, constantly name-dropping his Ivy League connections and the deals he'd closed. He was 50 years old, divorced, and had the kind of arrogant confidence that came from never being told no by anyone who mattered to him. The harassment started subtly, the way it always does with powerful men who think their position makes them irresistible. Hayes began finding excuses to call me into his corner office for strategic discussions that had nothing to do with client work. He'd stand uncomfortably close while reviewing my reports, his hand lingering on my shoulder longer than necessary. During company dinners, he'd insist I sit next to him, making comments about my natural beauty and how I was wasted on technical work when I could be representing the firm at high-level client meetings. When I kept things professional and focused on work, Hayes escalated. He started sending me expensive gifts, designer handbags, jewelry, wine, always with notes about recognizing exceptional talent. I returned everything through his assistant, but Hayes took my rejections as a personal challenge. During a staff meeting, he made a point of announcing that he was mentoring Madison personally, and that she had tremendous potential if she learned to embrace opportunities. The other consultants looked at me with a mixture of pity and envy, understanding exactly what kind of opportunities he meant. The worst part was watching Hayes's reaction to my family obligations. When I had to leave early to help Frank with unemployment paperwork, Hayes called it unprofessional prioritizing. When I declined his invitation to a weekend business retreat in Aspen because I was visiting my father in Detroit, Hayes exploded. "Madison, you need to understand something," he said, leaning across his mahogany desk with those cold blue eyes fixed on mine. "I'm offering you access to circles that most consultants only dream about. Harvard connections, Silicon Valley partnerships, defense contractor relationships worth hundreds of millions. But you're choosing to waste your time with some laid-off factory worker instead of building your career." That's when I realized what kind of man I was dealing with. Hayes didn't see my father as a human being who'd given his life to American manufacturing. He saw him as an obstacle to his conquest. In Hayes's world, working-class family obligations were character flaws that needed to be corrected. He'd been raised in wealth, educated at Harvard, and surrounded by people who told him he was brilliant and deserving of whatever he wanted. The idea that a mere employee would choose family loyalty over his attention was incomprehensible to his entitled mind. Hayes began making my work life increasingly difficult. He assigned me to projects with impossible deadlines, criticized my presentations in front of clients, and made subtle comments about consultants who lack commitment to excellence. But he always followed the punishment with renewed romantic advances, creating a psychological pattern designed to break me down. The message was clear: accept his attention, and my career would flourish. Keep rejecting him, and watch everything I'd worked for disappear. But Hayes had no idea who he was dealing with. I was Frank Parker's daughter, raised by a man who'd fought for every dollar and every bit of respect he'd ever earned. I knew how to document everything, how to stay professional under pressure, and most importantly, how to bide my time while gathering the evidence I'd need to destroy him completely. Because even as Hayes was planning my destruction, I was discovering secrets about his business that would make his harassment look like a minor offense compared to what he was really guilty of. 7 months before that frozen morning in the Rockies, I was living the dream I'd chased since leaving Detroit, being the lead consultant on the biggest renewable energy deal Colorado had ever seen. Tesla wasn't just looking for another consulting firm to rubber stamp their expansion plans. They wanted a partner who could revolutionize how utility-scale energy storage integrated with America's aging power grid, and somehow that partner was going to be me. The opportunity had landed on my desk through a connection Hayes had made during his Harvard days. Drew Martinez, now Tesla's director of grid integration, remembered Hayes from business school and reached out about Tesla's massive Colorado expansion. But Hayes was too busy playing golf in Aspen with defense contractors to handle the technical details. So he dumped the entire project on me with a casual, "Madison, you handle the renewable energy stuff. It's probably just some solar panel consultation." He had no idea what he'd just handed me. Tesla was planning to deploy their new Megapack 3 energy storage systems across Colorado's Front Range, creating the largest distributed battery network in American history. Each Megapack 3 could store 5 megawatt-hours of electricity, enough to power 3,750 homes for an hour, and Tesla wanted to install 200 units across strategic locations from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. The total project value was $847 million, but my consulting contract alone was worth $95 million over 5 years. I spent every waking moment for 7 months becoming the world's leading expert on utility-scale battery integration. While Hayes was harassing me about dinner dates and weekend retreats, I was diving deep into Tesla's revolutionary auto-bidder platform that could automatically trade electricity on energy markets, buying power when it was cheap and selling when prices spiked. I studied every technical specification of the Megapack systems, their 91% round-trip efficiency, their ability to operate in temperatures from -40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, their modular design that could scale from single units to gigawatt-hour installations. The breakthrough came when I realized that Colorado's unique geography and weather patterns created perfect opportunities for arbitrage trading that no one else had identified. The state's mountain regions generated massive amounts of solar power during sunny days, but demand peaked in Denver and Boulder during evening hours when the sun was already behind the Front Range. Traditional power companies were losing millions because they couldn't efficiently store and redistribute that mountain solar energy to urban areas during peak demand periods. My proposal solved everything with elegant simplicity. Instead of treating each Megapack as an isolated storage unit, I designed a networked system that would function like a single, massive battery spanning 300 miles of Colorado's most populated corridor. During the day, mountain solar installations would charge Megapacks in rural areas using Tesla's advanced silicon carbide inverters. Then, as evening demand surged in cities, the network would discharge power through optimized algorithms that I'd developed specifically for Colorado's unique elevation and weather patterns. But the real innovation was my integration with Colorado's existing infrastructure. I'd identified 47 locations where Megapacks could be installed at existing electrical substations, reducing installation costs by 60% compared to building new facilities. Each site would connect to Tesla's new megablock systems, pre-engineered units that combined 4 megapacks with integrated transformers, delivering 20 megawatt-hours of capacity that could be installed in just days instead of months. The financial projections were staggering. My analysis showed that Colorado utilities could save $340 million annually through peak shaving and energy arbitrage, while reducing carbon emissions by 2.8 million tons per year. Tesla's Auto Bidder platform would automatically optimize every charge and discharge cycle, learning Colorado's energy patterns and maximizing revenue from electricity markets that most people didn't even know existed. Tesla's executives were blown away. Drew Martinez told me that my Colorado proposal was the most sophisticated grid integration strategy Tesla had ever received from an external consultant. They wanted to use Colorado as a proof of concept for similar deployments across 12 other states, potentially expanding my consulting contract to over $500 million. Elon Musk himself had approved the project during a meeting where my technical specifications were presented to Tesla's executive team. The presentation scheduled for that snowy December morning was going to be the culmination of everything I'd worked toward. I'd prepared 127 slides covering every technical detail, every financial projection, every regulatory consideration. The Tesla team was flying in their top engineers from the Gigafactory in Nevada, along with executives from their energy division that had quietly become Tesla's most profitable business unit. Silicon Valley investors worth over $3 billion were planning to attend virtually, including representatives from major utility companies across the western United States. This wasn't just a consulting contract. It was my chance to reshape America's energy infrastructure while securing my family's financial future forever. Frank could not only keep his house in Detroit, but I could set him up with the kind of retirement he deserved after 34 years of building America's trucks. The $95 million contract would establish me as the go-to consultant for utility-scale renewable energy projects, opening doors to partnerships with every major technology company investing in clean energy. Hayes had been watching my preparation with growing resentment, realizing that his simple solar panel consultation was actually the biggest deal in the firm's history. As the presentation date approached and his romantic advances continued to be rejected, I could see the dangerous calculation forming in his mind. If Madison Parker succeeded with Tesla, she'd become too powerful and independent to control. But if Madison Parker failed catastrophically, she'd be destroyed professionally, while he could still claim credit for securing the initial Tesla connection. What I didn't realize was that Hayes was already planning exactly how to ensure my failure, and how far he was willing to go to maintain his control over both me and the company that bore his name. December 15th started like the most important day of my professional life, but William Hayes had already decided it would be my last day of relevance in the renewable energy industry. I woke at 4:30 a.m. in my downtown Denver apartment, reviewing my presentation notes one final time while coffee brewed and snow began falling outside my windows. The Tesla executives were flying in from Nevada. Silicon Valley investors were connecting virtually, and 180 of the most influential people in America's clean energy sector would be watching me present the $95 million partnership that would revolutionize Colorado's power grid. Hayes had been unusually accommodating the past week, which should have been my first warning. The man who'd spent 9 months making my life miserable was suddenly offering support and encouragement. Madison, this Tesla presentation is crucial for the firm's reputation, he'd said during our final preparation meeting. I want to ensure you arrive perfectly composed and ready to represent Hayes Global Consulting at the highest level. I've arranged luxury executive transport to guarantee you reach the Denver Tech Center without any stress or distractions. I should have questioned why Hayes cared about my comfort, but I was consumed with final preparations for the most complex presentation of my career. My slides detailed every aspect of the Colorado Megapack deployment. 200 units of Tesla's newest 5 MWERN systems strategically positioned from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs, integrated with existing electrical substations to minimize installation costs by 60%. The financial projections showed $340 million in annual savings for Colorado utilities through intelligent energy arbitrage using Tesla's AutoBidder platform. At 6:45 a.m., I stood in the lobby of my apartment building wearing my best charcoal suit, leather briefcase in hand, watching for the luxury executive transport. Hayes had promised. The snow was falling heavier now, but nothing unusual for December in Denver. A black Lincoln Navigator pulled up with tinted windows and Colorado plates. The driver, a middle-aged man in a dark suit, stepped out and approached me professionally. "Ms. Parker, I'm here to transport you to the Tesla presentation this morning." Mr. Hayes wanted to ensure you arrived relaxed and prepared. His voice was calm, businesslike, exactly what I'd expect from an executive car service. He took my briefcase, held the door, and I settled into the heated leather seats, feeling grateful for Hayes's unexpected consideration. The first 20 minutes seemed normal as we headed south through Denver's morning traffic, but then the driver merged onto I-25 South instead of continuing toward the Denver Tech Center. "Excuse me," I called through the partition. "The presentation is at the Tech Center, not this direction." The driver's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror with an expression that made my stomach drop. Mr. Hayes specified a different route this morning due to road conditions. "We'll approach from the south to avoid traffic delays." By the time we turned west on I-70 toward the mountains, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. "Stop the car immediately," I demanded, but the partition between us was locked and my door handles wouldn't respond. My phone showed we were heading directly into the Rocky Mountains, 30 miles from Denver, and 50 miles from where I needed to be in exactly 90 minutes. "This is kidnapping. Turn around right now." The driver's response was chilling in its practiced calm. "Mr. Hayes instructed me to ensure you had time for quiet reflection before such an important presentation. Sometimes a drive in the mountains helps clear the mind." The bastard was following a script. Hayes had planned every word. As we climbed toward Vail Pass, the snow intensified into a full blizzard, and I realized the true scope of Hayes's revenge. At 9,000 feet elevation near Vail, the driver pulled into a remote scenic overlook and stopped. "Your reflection time begins now, Miss Parker. Mr. Hayes believes some fresh mountain air will help you gain perspective on your career priorities." He unlocked my door, stepped out, and before I could react, he was back in the Navigator driving away, leaving me standing in 3 feet of snow wearing business attire designed for boardrooms, not survival. The temperature was 12 degrees below zero with 40-mile-per-hour winds. My phone had 2 bars and 18% battery. It was 8:47 a.m., and my presentation was scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. in a conference room 60 miles away, where Drew Martinez from Tesla was probably wondering why the lead consultant hadn't arrived for sound checks. I tried calling Hayes, but he'd blocked my number. I tried calling the office, but got voicemail. I tried calling 911, but the call wouldn't connect in the storm. While I was fighting hypothermia and trying to find cell coverage in the Rocky Mountains, Ashley Morrison, Hayes's 26-year-old new girlfriend, who joined the firm 3 weeks earlier with a marketing degree and 0 renewable energy experience, was walking into the Tesla presentation conference room carrying my briefcase, my slides, and my 7 months of research. She introduced herself to Drew Martinez as the lead consultant on the Colorado Megapack project and began presenting my technical specifications, my financial projections, my innovative integration strategies, as if she'd developed them herself. By the time Mountain Rescue found me at 2:30 p.m., called by a snowplow operator who saw me flagging down traffic on I-70, the Tesla deal was done. Ashley had secured the $95 million contract using my work, earned a promotion to senior director, and been assigned my corner office overlooking the Denver skyline. Hayes held a press conference that afternoon announcing Hayes Global Consulting's successful partnership with Tesla Energy, while describing me as an unreliable consultant who abandoned the most important client presentation in company history. The Denver Business Journal ran the story that evening. Local consulting firm lands major Tesla contract despite consultant no-show. Drew Martinez was quoted saying Tesla was disappointed by the original consultant's unprofessional absence, but impressed by Ashley Morrison's comprehensive understanding of utility-scale energy storage. My 7 months of expertise, my innovative solutions, my breakthrough integration strategies, all credited to a woman who couldn't tell a Megapack from a Powerwall. When I finally returned to the office the next morning, frozen, exhausted, and professionally destroyed, Hayes was waiting with a termination letter and a smug satisfaction that made me want to strangle him with my bare hands. But as he smiled and explained how my abandonment of critical client responsibilities violated company policy, I realized something Hayes didn't know. While he was orchestrating my destruction, I'd already discovered the Swiss bank statements that would destroy him completely. The humiliation campaign began before I'd even thawed out from my Rocky Mountain nightmare. By 3 p.m. that same December afternoon, while I was still in the emergency room getting treated for mild hypothermia and frostbite on my fingers, Hayes was already spinning the narrative to every media contact in Denver's business community. The man who'd orchestrated my abandonment in a blizzard was now positioning himself as the victim of an unreliable employee who'd abandoned the biggest client presentation in Colorado consulting history. The Denver Business Journal ran the story online by 4:30 p.m. Hayes Global Consulting saves major Tesla deal despite senior consultant no-show. Hayes had given them a quote that made my blood boil. Unfortunately, Madison Parker chose to prioritize personal matters over professional responsibilities on the most crucial day of her career. While we're disappointed by her unprofessional conduct, I'm proud that Ashley Morrison stepped up to deliver exceptional results for our Tesla partnership. The bastard was already rewriting history, turning his criminal abandonment of me into my personal failure. By morning, the story had spread through Colorado's tight-knit consulting community like wildfire. Hayes had contacts at every major firm in Denver, and he used every one of them to destroy my reputation. The narrative was perfectly crafted. Madison Parker was the promising consultant who cracked under pressure, who abandoned her team when they needed her most, who proved that supporting laid-off family members made someone unreliable for high-stakes client work. My 7 months of technical expertise, my innovative integration strategies, my breakthrough solutions for Colorado's energy grid, all forgotten in favor of scandalous gossip about the consultant who disappeared during the Tesla presentation. Drew Martinez from Tesla called Hayes personally to express disappointment about my unprofessional absence, not knowing that Hayes had literally kidnapped me to prevent my attendance. Ashley Morrison, who couldn't explain a single technical detail of the Megapack deployment without reading from my notes, was praised as exceptionally knowledgeable about utility-scale energy storage. The Silicon Valley investors who'd planned to attend virtually were told that personnel changes had improved the quality of Hayes Global's consulting team. Within a week, Ashley was promoted to Senior Director of Renewable Energy Consulting with a salary that exceeded my own by $40,000. She moved into my corner office on the 23rd floor, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Front Range Mountains where I'd been abandoned. Hayes had my nameplate removed from the door and my access cards deactivated while I was still recovering from frostbite. My Tesla project files, my proprietary research, my 7 months of technical development, all transferred to Ashley's login credentials as if I'd never existed. The professional destruction was swift and thorough, but the personal crisis was devastating. Frank called me on December 18th with news that shattered what remained of my composure. "Madison, honey, I got a letter from the unemployment office yesterday. Benefits end January 15th. After that, I'm on my own." His voice carried the weight of a man who'd worked 34 years building America's trucks, only to be discarded at 58 years old in a city where manufacturing jobs disappeared faster than auto plants could close. Frank's unemployment benefits had provided $1,147 per month, barely enough to cover his mortgage, utilities, and basic expenses in a Detroit neighborhood that was still recovering from the automotive industry collapse. Without that income, he had maybe 6 weeks before foreclosure proceedings would begin on the house where he'd raised me after Mom died. The house where every room held memories of a family that had always prioritized integrity over profit. The health insurance situation made everything worse. My termination from Hayes Global meant losing coverage January 1st, and Cobra would cost $847 per month, money I didn't have while searching for work in an industry where my reputation had been systematically destroyed. Frank's medications for his heart condition cost $340 per month without insurance, and his doctor had warned that stress could trigger serious complications. I was watching my father's health deteriorate while his financial security crumbled, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to help him. Every consulting firm in Colorado had heard Hayes' version of events. My calls went unreturned. My applications disappeared into digital black holes, and the few interviews I managed ended with polite rejections citing concerns about reliability under pressure. Hayes had poisoned every professional relationship I'd built in 2 years of exceptional work, reducing me to a cautionary tale about consultants who couldn't handle big-league client responsibilities. The internal conflict was tearing me apart. Every instinct told me to expose Hayes' criminal conduct, to fight back against his lies, to demand justice for what he'd done. But Frank's foreclosure notice was sitting on my kitchen table, and revenge wouldn't pay his mortgage or buy his heart medication. I needed a job desperately, and Hayes Global was the only firm in Denver that would still employ me, even in a diminished capacity doing grunt work for the man who destroyed my career. Hayes savored my desperation with the satisfaction of a predator who'd successfully cornered his prey. He offered me a position as junior research assistant at 60% of my previous salary, handling filing and basic administrative tasks under Ashley's supervision. The humiliation was intentional and complete. I'd be working for the woman who'd stolen my Tesla presentation while organizing the files of the man who'd abandoned me in a blizzard. But Hayes had made one critical mistake in his obsession with breaking me down. While he was focused on destroying my reputation and forcing my submission, he'd grown careless about protecting the secrets that could destroy him completely. And as I sat in that cubicle sorting through archived client files, watching Ashley occupy my stolen corner office while my father faced losing his home, I discovered documentation that would make Hayes wish he'd never heard the name Madison Parker. The Swiss bank statements were just the beginning of what William Hayes had hidden from his clients, his investors, and both of his wives. 3 weeks into my humiliating demotion to junior research assistant, I was sorting through Hayes Global's archived client files in a windowless basement storage room that smelled like moldy paper and broken dreams. Hayes had assigned me this punishment duty with obvious satisfaction. The woman who'd once presented million-dollar renewable energy strategies to Tesla executives was now organizing decade-old expense reports and contract amendments. Ashley Morrison occupied my stolen corner office above, probably enjoying the mountain views while taking credit for innovations she couldn't even pronounce correctly. But Hayes's vindictive assignment was about to become his downfall, because buried in those musty filing cabinets were secrets that would destroy him more completely than he'd ever imagined possible. It started with a misfiled folder containing expense reports from Hayes's business development trips to Switzerland over the past 18 months. As someone who'd meticulously managed consulting budgets, I immediately noticed irregularities that made my pulse quicken with investigative excitement. Hayes had been billing major defense contractors, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, for strategic consultation meetings in Zurich that lasted 7 to 10 days each month. The invoices showed charges of $15,000 to $25,000 per trip for international client relationship development and European market analysis. But when I cross-referenced these dates with Hayes's actual client meetings, I discovered he'd been double billing. The same weeks he claimed to be consulting for Boeing in Zurich, his calendar showed him meeting with completely different clients in Denver, Aspen, and Colorado Springs. The deeper I dug, the more devastating the evidence became. Hayes had created an elaborate financial scheme where he billed American defense contractors for fake European business trips while actually using the money to fund a secret life in Switzerland. Bank statements showed wire transfers to Credit Suisse accounts totaling $2.8 million over 18 months, all funded by fraudulent consulting invoices to companies that held multi-billion-dollar government contracts. But the real bombshell was hidden in a folder marked Personal Confidential that should never have been stored with client files. Marriage certificates, 2 of them. William Hayes had married Jennifer Morrison in Aspen, Colorado in 2019, but he'd also married Elena Richter in Zurich, Switzerland in 2021. The bastard was a bigamist, maintaining 2 complete families with money stolen from defense contractors who trusted him with classified energy infrastructure consulting. The Swiss marriage certificate showed Hayes had purchased a lakeside villa in Zurich for Elena and their 6-month-old son, William Jr. Photos tucked behind the legal documents revealed Hayes living an entirely different life, playing happy father to a Swiss family, while his official wife, Jennifer, believed he was building the consulting business that bore his name. The fraud wasn't just financial, it was a complete betrayal of everyone who trusted him. I was photographing the most damning documents with my phone when footsteps echoed in the basement corridor. I quickly shoved the files back into their folders as David Kim, the corporate auditor, appeared in the doorway looking nervous and determined. David was 34, methodical, and had the kind of quiet intensity that made him nearly invisible in office meetings. Exactly the type of person who noticed discrepancies that others missed. "Madison, I need to talk to you about something, and I hope you'll hear me out before you decide I'm crazy," he said, glancing around the empty storage room like he was worried about surveillance. "I've been reviewing Hayes's expense reports for the quarterly audit, and there are patterns that don't make sense. Billing irregularities, duplicate charges, international wire transfers that seem excessive for normal business operations. My heart raced as I realized David had discovered the same fraud scheme from a different angle. What kind of irregularities? I asked carefully, not wanting to reveal what I'd already found until I knew where he stood. David pulled out a tablet containing spreadsheets that made my accounting-trained brain sing with vindication. Hayes has been billing multiple clients for the same trips, inflating expenses by 400% and routing payments through offshore accounts that aren't listed in our corporate banking relationships. Over the past 2 years, I calculate he's stolen at least $4.2 million from clients, with most of it going to Swiss financial institutions. I made a decision that would change both our lives. David, what I'm about to show you will either make us heroes or get us both killed. But Hayes crossed a line that goes way beyond financial fraud. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the marriage certificates, the Swiss bank statements, the villa purchase documents. He's not just embezzling money, he's a bigamist who abandoned me in a blizzard to steal my Tesla presentation. And he's been funding his secret Swiss family with money stolen from defense contractors. David's eyes widened as he processed the magnitude of Hayes' crimes. This isn't just corporate fraud. This is international money laundering involving defense contractors. The FBI has entire divisions that investigate this level of criminal activity. He paused, looking at me with new respect. Madison, you realize what this means? If we can prove all this, Hayes doesn't just lose his business. He goes to federal prison for decades. We spent the next 4 hours in that basement storage room, systematically documenting every aspect of Hayes' criminal enterprise. David's auditing expertise combined with my consulting experience created a devastating case file. We identified $5.7 million in fraudulent charges to defense contractors, traced wire transfers to Swiss accounts used for villa purchases and family support, and documented the timeline showing Hayes had planned my mountain abandonment to coincide with Ashley stealing my Tesla presentation. But we needed more than documents. We needed Hayes to confess to crimes that would hold up in federal court. David had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Hayes trusts me because auditors are supposed to be boring and harmless. If I told him I'd discovered some accounting irregularities that needed clarification, he might talk openly about the Swiss accounts, thinking he can manipulate me into keeping quiet. The next morning, David requested a private meeting with Hayes under the pretense of routine audit procedures. I waited in the bathroom adjacent to Hayes' corner office, recording everything through the ventilation system with my phone pressed against the air duct. What I captured was better than I dared hope. Hayes not only admitted to the Swiss embezzlement, but bragged about orchestrating my mountain abandonment. David, those Swiss transfers are perfectly legitimate business investments, Hayes said with the confidence of a man who'd never been challenged. I'm developing European markets that will generate millions in future revenue. As for Madison Parker, that woman needed to learn that rejecting my mentorship has consequences. The mountain incident taught her that working-class family obligations can't compete with Silicon Valley opportunities. Hayes actually laughed while describing how he'd arranged for the driver to abandon me in the blizzard. Madison thought she was irreplaceable with her technical expertise, but Ashley proved that presentation skills matter more than engineering knowledge. Sometimes you have to destroy someone's confidence before they understand their proper place in the corporate hierarchy. By the time Hayes finished his confession, David and I had enough recorded evidence to destroy him completely. But Hayes had no idea that his victims were about to become his executioners, or that federal agents were already investigating defense contractor fraud schemes exactly like the one he'd been operating. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division took cases like this very seriously, especially when they involved companies holding classified government contracts. That evening, I called my father Frank with news that would change everything. "Dad, I can't explain everything yet, but the man who destroyed my career just made the biggest mistake of his life. Within a week, you're going to see justice served in a way that will make every newspaper in America." Frank's voice carried hope for the first time since Ford had laid him off. His daughter was fighting back, and she was going to win. Hayes thought he'd broken me with his mountain betrayal and professional sabotage, but he'd actually created the perfect weapon for his own destruction. Because while he was savoring my humiliation, I was building a federal case that would send him to prison for 25 years, while his secret Swiss wife and his Aspen wife discovered each other's existence in the most publicly devastating way possible. The moment of reckoning came on February 14th, Valentine's Day, which felt perfectly poetic for destroying a bigamist who'd betrayed everyone who'd ever trusted him. David and I had spent 6 weeks building an airtight federal case with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, but we wanted Hayes's destruction to be as public and humiliating as the mountain abandonment he'd orchestrated against me. The quarterly earnings call with Boeing and Lockheed Martin executives provided the perfect stage for his downfall. Special Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI had been investigating defense contractor fraud for 8 years, and she told me that Hayes's scheme was among the most brazen she'd encountered. "Madison, we've confirmed $5.7 million in fraudulent billing to defense contractors, plus the bigamy charges and international money laundering through Swiss accounts. But the recordings you provided of Hayes confessing to orchestrating your abandonment and bragging about destroying your career, that's going to make this case legendary in federal court." The plan was devastatingly simple. At exactly 10 a.m., Hayes would begin the quarterly call with 300-plus investors and defense contractor executives listening live. At 10:15 a.m., his wife Jennifer would arrive at the Denver office from Aspen, believing David had discovered concerning financial irregularities that required immediate discussion. At 10:17 a.m., his secret wife Elena would arrive from Zurich with their infant son, having received an anonymous email containing photos of Hayes's Colorado wedding to Jennifer, along with evidence of his American family. I would be listening from the conference room adjacent to Hayes's office, recording everything while FBI agents positioned themselves throughout the building. The Denver Business Journal, Wall Street Journal, and CNN had all received anonymous tips about a major corporate fraud announcement, scheduled for 10:20 a.m. at Hayes Global Consulting, ensuring that Hayes's destruction would be broadcast across every business network in America. The call began normally, with Hayes delivering his prepared remarks about exceptional growth in renewable energy consulting and strategic partnerships with leading technology companies. His voice carried the same arrogant confidence that had made my life hell for 9 months, completely unaware that his criminal empire was about to collapse in real time. Hayes Global has secured major contracts with Tesla, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin, he announced to the investors, unknowingly describing the same companies he'd been systematically defrauding. Our European expansion has been particularly profitable, with Swiss operations generating substantial revenue through strategic client relationships. At 10:15 a.m., Jennifer Hayes walked into the building wearing her expensive Aspen socialite attire, her face tight with confusion and growing anger. David met her in the lobby, explaining that he'd discovered serious financial discrepancies involving Swiss bank accounts and undisclosed international business activities that required immediate clarification from her husband. At 10:17 a.m., Elena Richter Hayes stepped out of a taxi from Denver International Airport carrying 6-month-old William Hayes Jr. and a folder containing every document that proved Hayes's bigamy and fraud. Her English was accented but perfectly clear as she told the receptionist, "I am here to see my husband, William Hayes, about our family's financial situation and some very serious lies he has told." Hayes was mid-sentence explaining innovative European market penetration strategies when both women appeared in his office doorway simultaneously. The live microphone captured every word as his carefully constructed world exploded. "William, what the hell is this woman doing here?" Jennifer demanded, staring at Elena and the baby. "And why is David Kim saying you've been stealing money from clients and hiding Swiss bank accounts?" Elena's voice was ice cold as she responded in perfect English. "I am Elena Hayes, William's wife of 4 years, and this is his son. The question is why you are claiming to be married to my husband when I have legal documents proving he belongs to me and our child." Hayes's stammering response was broadcast live to 300-plus defense industry executives. "Jennifer, Elena, this is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. The Swiss accounts are legitimate business investments. The marriages are both illegal," Special Agent Chen announced as she entered the office with 3 FBI agents, their arrival captured by the still-active conference call microphone. "William Hayes, you're under arrest for international wire fraud, money laundering, bigamy, and conspiracy to defraud defense contractors holding classified government contracts." The live call erupted in chaos as investors realized they were witnessing a federal arrest during a quarterly earnings announcement. Hayes's pathetic attempts to end the call were futile. David had locked the conference room controls, ensuring that every word of his downfall was broadcast to his victims, clients, and competitors. "You have the right to remain silent," Agent Chen continued, loud enough for every Boeing and Lockheed Martin executive to hear clearly. The charges include embezzling $5.7 million from defense contractors, maintaining fraudulent Swiss bank accounts, bigamy involving 2 wives across international borders, and orchestrating criminal harassment, including the abandonment of employee Madison Parker in dangerous mountain conditions. Jennifer's scream of rage was audible to everyone on the call. "You stole money from defense contractors to pay for that Swiss whore and her bastard child while I thought you were building our business?" Elena's response was equally devastating. "Swiss whore? I am his legal wife with proper marriage certificates, while you are obviously the mistress he never mentioned." As FBI agents handcuffed Hayes, I finally entered his office for the confrontation I'd been dreaming about since that frozen morning in the Rocky Mountains. "Hello, William," I said, knowing my voice was being broadcast to every person who'd heard his lies about my unprofessional conduct. "Remember me? The consultant you abandoned in a blizzard because I wouldn't sleep with you? The woman whose Tesla presentation you stole and gave to your girlfriend?" Hayes's face went white as he realized the scope of his destruction. "Madison, you don't understand the full situation. The Swiss accounts were necessary for business development. The mountain incident was never supposed to." "Never supposed to what?" I interrupted, making sure every word was captured by the live microphone. "Never supposed to nearly kill me? Never supposed to destroy my career? Never supposed to steal my 7 months of technical expertise and give it to Ashley Morrison, who couldn't explain a megapack deployment if her life depended on it?" Agent Chen smiled as she read Hayes' additional charges. Conspiracy to commit assault through reckless endangerment, identity theft related to presentation materials, and violation of federal whistleblower protection laws. The defendant faces 25 to 30 years in federal prison, forfeiture of all assets purchased with embezzled funds, and $15 million in fines and restitution. The FBI had frozen Hayes' Aspen properties, his Swiss villa, all corporate accounts, and his luxury vehicles within hours of the arrest. Both wives would discover that their homes, cars, and lifestyles had been funded entirely by money stolen from defense contractors. Jennifer filed for divorce that afternoon, while Elena returned to Switzerland with their son, leaving Hayes to face federal prosecutors alone. 3 months later, I was sitting in my own corner office overlooking downtown Denver, president of Parker Energy Solutions, with David as CFO and romantic partner. The FBI's whistleblower reward program had paid me $8.7 million, 15% of the recovered funds plus damages for the harassment and attempted destruction of my career. Tesla had not only restored our original $95 million contract, but expanded it to include their 12-state deployment strategy, making my firm the exclusive consultant for utility-scale energy storage across the western United States. Frank saved his Detroit home and launched his own renewable energy consulting business, using his automotive manufacturing expertise to help electric vehicle companies optimize their production processes. Hayes Global Consulting had collapsed completely, with Ashley Morrison fired for fraud and all clients transferring their contracts to legitimate firms. Hayes ultimately pleaded guilty to all federal charges, receiving 27 years in prison and ordered to pay $18.2 million in restitution. His sentencing hearing was covered by every major business publication in America, with my story becoming a landmark case study in corporate whistleblower protection and federal prosecution of defense contractor fraud. The last time I saw William Hayes, he was being led into federal court in shackles, his Harvard MBA and Silicon Valley connections useless against the evidence David and I had meticulously gathered. As he passed me in the courthouse hallway, I smiled and said quietly, "You should have just accepted my rejection and treated me professionally. Now you'll have 27 years to think about how your arrogance destroyed everything you thought you owned." Justice had been served completely, and the working-class values Frank had taught me had triumphed over Hayes' entitled privilege in exactly the way America's legal system was designed to work.